Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan Trop. I welcome you all to the March 13, 2025 meeting of EDIT. I'll call the meeting to order at 7:34 p.m. and invite everybody to please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
Allegiance to the
flag
flag
of
of
America, to the republic
the
for
republic
which it
with which
stands,
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty
with
and
liberty
justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Move on to correspondence. We've received two emails since our last meeting. One of them was spam. The other one was a follow-up from Catherine Hulbert, thanking us for taking the time to consider her remarks and her email at our last meeting, and to follow up with some additional information, most especially that the issues at the elementary schools were limited to just a couple. There were some issues at one of the middle schools, but not focused on race. And her relative has lived in Trumbull for almost all her life. No other correspondence, so I'll move to public comment. And I have a suspicion I know where this is going, but Bill, would you zero? Okay, just two of you. All right. Uh, so moving on to approval of the minutes of February 13. Everybody was, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped roll call.
Do we have a quorum?
We do. Our roll call is, obviously in addition to myself, Rick Bolton, Rodney Gray, Shala Fleming, and David Rosenberg is also present, even though not visible.
Okay, that's
In addition, we're joined by the Town Council Liaison, Jennifer Winchell, by our clerk, Joanne Glasser-Ornstein, and by Bill Chin. So having now covered that, move to approval of the minutes of February 13. Everybody in attendance tonight was in attendance at that meeting except David. And so I would ask anybody, including David, if someone wants to make a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? I have one item of discussion. Would you, Joanne, please correct the spelling of Catherine Hulbert to use a C? Her name is Catherine with a C in two places. Any other comments on the minutes?
You're muted.
Her last name is Hulbert, H-O-L-B-E-R-T.
Hulbert, yeah.
H-U-L, okay. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, I actually just noticed that my name is also spelled wrong at the top. There's no H on the end.
Oh, did you become a loaf of bread?
I was gonna say, I love that.
I have been called a loaf of bread many times in my life, including by my favorite English teacher.
Might have been a spell check thing.
I love challah bread.
All right, with those two corrections, any other comments? All in favor? All right, unanimous with David abstaining. I'll move on to old business. The diversity training update, actually some progress on that after Jim Cordone was kind enough to lend an assist. I heard from Tom McCarthy, and he has indicated his availability to discuss next steps with representatives of our committee on Tuesday morning or Wednesday of next week. Unfortunately, I'm not able to make either of those, but I understand that Shala is available Tuesday from 10 to 11, and Rick is available at that time. Rodney, if you had an interest in participating in that meeting, does that time work for you?
I can
Tuesday
do it.
at 10?
Yep.
All right. I will let Tom know that the three of you will meet with him on Tuesday at 10 a.m. and we'll look forward to hearing more about that meeting at our next meeting as you advance the ball. Any further discussion on that? Obviously, until we talk to Tom, I'm not sure there's much more to discuss, but okay. Next item on the agenda is our book club. That's coming up March 24th, 6 p.m. at the library. We started some publicity for that. Thank you, Shala. And I'm looking forward to that. Any further discussion on that one? All right. There was a Black History Month event. The Nero Hawley program went off, and I understand went well. I had COVID, so I was unable to attend. But Jennifer, maybe you would share with us a little bit about that event.
Sure. We had about 20 people there. Some I knew, some of it I did not know. I had Tom Colohan, who was the the Connecticut State Troubadour, come and sing some songs for us. And we introduced the program with him coming in, singing a song and plucking on his guitar. It was very impressive. And I had a script that I had written on Nero Hawley, and we went back and forth between my script and him singing. It was a terrific afternoon. We had a great time.
Wonderful. I don't know if anybody else has any comments on that event. If not, I'll move on.
It
Yeah,
made
my
me
wife-
realize we need to name the new school instead of Hillcrest. We should name it Nero Hawley School.
Interesting. I wasn't able to attend, but my wife and daughter were there with a friend. So they said the same thing.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for the report and for the program. Next item on our agenda is an update on the discussions we've been, I guess I would say, trying to have with the education department. After our last meeting, I, as agreed, although a little slower than I would have liked, wrote to Dr. Semmel and renewed our request to sit down for a conversation with the leaders of their DEI teams, and shared with him the discussion that we had with Ms. Hulbert. And maybe I worded it poorly. I think he misunderstood what I had intended, but in any event, the response was a little bit different than I had hoped, certainly than I had expected. And Dr. Semmel expressed some frustration that we had not called to his attention immediately what he regarded as an HR issue, and asked that we provide to him the email from Ms. Hulbert, which she had asked us not to provide. He pointed out that it was subject to FOIA, and of course he's correct. And so under those circumstances, I wrote back to him to let him know that I thought there had been a little bit of a miscommunication. I provided to him the email. I told him that we were not at all seeking to be involved in HR decisions, but we're looking at a much bigger picture. I've not been able to speak with him, and I'm not entirely sure where we are at this point. I'm
Did we
I don't
make
mean to-
Catherine, did we make Catherine aware that we had to, under FOIA, move the email to him?
I did not. I don't think we have an obligation to do that, but we certainly could tell her that I did do it. She may
think we-
be paying attention and know, but as of now, but
I think we should.
I mean, I'll take your advice, Rick, and let her know. That's fine.
Well, I'm sure she will understand that we had no choice but to comply, but she did ask for confidentiality, and we were put in a difficult position that we couldn't maintain that. We should at least make her aware that we had to do that.
No, you're right. That's fair. I'm not entirely sure where we stand with Dr. Semmel at this point, and I guess I'll open for discussion whether there's something to be done at some level. If he does not want to meet with us, that may be his prerogative, but I don't. I'll open it up for discussion.
I don't think there's value in our pushing it.
I'm not really sure the bandwidth that we really have either in terms of what our options are. I mean, what's possible?
Yeah,
I mean, I saw an updated email, not going to name the locations, but we can't speak to anybody unless it's Semmel. I mean, it has to be Semmel only.
Well, I mean, look, there's an infinite array of possibilities, or nearly so. Some of them may be productive, some of them may be counterproductive. I think that to the extent that we would like to build a relationship with Dr. Semmel over time and with the education department over time, that means doing this in a way that is sensitive to his concerns, which I'm not sure we fully understand. And so, but one of the concerns that I know, I believe he has, is that we be respectful of the organization of his department. And I think that he would be off-put if we tried to circumvent that authority.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think there's anything productive for us attempting to communicate with anybody else under his leadership. I mean,
I don't think he's sorry.
The last thing he wants is to hear that we've been, doing anything, no matter how innocent, no matter how potentially productive. He does not want to hear that we've been talking to one of his principals or, anybody else that's under his jurisdiction. Our conversation for the time being needs to be exclusively with him.
I think he's well intended, and I think he's dealing with a difficult set of circumstances. And my personal view is that we should allow him space and time and continue to try to build a relationship with the education department the way we have been trying to do and earn his trust. But that's my personal view.
I agree wholeheartedly.
So do I. I
So
think you
this
could
is-
end up winning the battle and losing the war. So
Yeah.
So this issue is not in our purview then, because of I mean, as we intended, we said in the last meeting that this was in our purview, correct?
So this is the area of miscommunication, I think, that I had with Dr. Semmel. And I'm prepared to accept some responsibility for it if my email to him was not crafted as precisely as I might have liked. I don't think it is within our purview at all to try to address HR issues within the school. And he, I think, misconstrued what I was saying as an effort to try to intervene in how the school was handling an incident with a teacher and specific students. I don't think that's in our purview. What I had hoped we could do was have a conversation with the school system around the mechanisms and programs that exist within the school to avoid these kinds of incidents or to address them globally. So are there assembly programs that exist to talk to the students about how one deals with people in the community? Are there classroom lessons? Are there is there messaging about the school's values that are worth discussing? And that was the conversation, at least I thought was within our purview and we would like to have with him. But I don't know when we'll be able to have that.
Sure. Yeah, I do understand both sides. I mean, really curbing my emotions on this, and understanding both the purviews here. Can you disclose the emails that you wrote and he responded to the committee?
Yeah, I don't want to.
Understand an idea of how things
I
are
want to.
in perspective.
I want to be a little bit sensitive to what may be his perspective about how public to make emails, but I can certainly tell you that what I wrote to him was essentially that, as you may be aware, at our last meeting, Edit discussed the poor treatment a substitute teacher had received in two Trumbull elementary schools. Multiple students in each school, we heard, had taunted this woman on the basis of her race. We continue to seek the opportunity for further dialogue with the education department, and in particular, would like to better understand the means by which Trumbull Public Schools address issues like this. And I think it was that last phrase, Trumbull Public Schools address issues like this, that caused him to think that we wanted to get into this incident. And so his response, I won't read, but as I've characterized, was he wanted to get the email. He wanted to have the HR issue dealt within the schools, and didn't see a need to meet with us.
Okay. Last question I have is because I just don't understand. Maybe someone else in the committee can help me as far as from the HR perspective. I just was trying to understand how that hierarchy works. Is it in each school has an HR team that's set up to handle these issues, or is it strictly his HR team that's handling the schools?
Jennifer would have better insight than I do.
The only HR people are at Long Hill with the superintendent. All of the hiring goes through there.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this?
Oh yeah. So where we are at, we're just waiting for him to respond to further respond and communicate with us. That's where we are.
I don't honestly know, Rodney. I don't know whether to expect a further response from him at this point, or whether we should simply, over time, look to continue to build relationships. At the very least, the latter. But Shala?
I just wanted to share. You said something earlier, John, that sits with me, which is I don't think we are clear what feels like, or maybe reads like, hesitation on the part of Dr. Semmel to engage in the ways that we've asked for. Right now feels like hesitation. We don't know what's going on, right? We have not been directly told, we want to engage, but here's the thing, or no, we have no interest in engaging. And so I don't think the time is now, because it seems like the most recent exchange probably did not sit well with Dr. Semmel, but at some point I do think it is worthwhile for us to try to ask for an understanding as to what the hesitations are, because I think I think what I've heard is that we are all in agreement that we want to continue to try to build and foster a relationship that's collaborative. But if that is not something that Dr. Semmel is interested in, then we should just know that.
Fair enough. Any other comment? Okay. Next up is the townwide survey update. I know Rodney did his homework. I know I didn't, and I apologize. It's been crazy. But Rick, Shala, do you want to share with us where we're at and whether we need another month or whether there's something to talk about?
Oh, we have a full draft ready to share with you.
Okay. Do you want to share your screen now? Do you want to talk it through? How do you-
Charlotte, do you
Yeah,
want to share?
I'll share my screen, Rick, and maybe you can talk through
Yeah, that's
how you
fine.
organize things. Can you all see that?
Yes, a little small, but yes.
Hold
Okay,
a second.
So what we started with, the same place we started last time, was that I put together a very bare bones straw man that we could build on, and then Charlotte did some fairly extensive research for other organizations that were doing something similar. And we took also, I think, some feedback that I know Rodney, you provided, and we tried to weave it all together as sort of like, okay, this is the sum of the inputs we've had so far. So this is probably, we're all capable of reading fairly quickly, so I don't imagine it would take too long for everybody to just take a pass through this if you want to. If not, then it's a fairly quick read for everyone to take a look at, tomorrow, the next couple of days, and see whether or not we're fairly close. I think, we've got, it's too big. I would argue at this point. I think it needs to be pared down, or at least it needs to be, maybe at some point tranched. Maybe we can do the first level of it, and some of it might be better done as a second wave, to people who respond. Maybe something we could think about, something the way I'm sure most of the US, census is done, where most of us get something that takes about 3 minutes to complete, and a small percentage of people get something that's really quite extensive. So we might want to pare this down to something that is a little more approachable. We'll get a much better response rate, and then potentially take those people who have demonstrated that they're willing to participate, and then potentially ask them to go through something that's a little more in depth. So do we want to take a quick 4 or 5 minutes for everybody to just do a quick read through?
Sure. Unless anyone objects. I assume that the opening paragraph there is for us, not for the survey.
Of course, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, those paragraphs are more just what was the thinking, what are we hoping to gather from
that's
that
right.
section? Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Ask a question. How do we, what is the process of collecting the data look like?
Well, I think that is yet to be determined, right? I mean,
I asked that specifically because I wonder whether if some of these questions feel like they could be multiple choice, which would then give you a scale to put it on, which might make it easier to both fill out, checking a box as opposed to writing out a word. And then when the data comes back, you've got, 1 to 5, and then you've got a number you can assign to, or a letter you can assign to it.
I would definitely want some of this to be, put on a Likert scale. And some of it is checking the block, just male, female, other, just, and some of it needs to be open-ended. So I think as we go through and decide on the content, some of it will be obvious, I think, what format you will use, and some of it's probably worth at least a little bit of discussion. But I would see this at least at 3 different levels of, response. Again, checking the block, some sort of a scale, some opportunity for some open-ended response. Maybe basic multiple choices in there as well.
Okay.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
We can circulate, via email after the meeting if folks want additional time
Yes,
to
Yeah.
look at it and
So
share
why don't
feedback.
we open it up for discussion? I don't know if it's necessary to leave it on the screen. There we go. Um, I have some thoughts, some of which align with what David said, but I don't want to monopolize. So, David, Rodney, does either of you have comments?
Oh yeah, mine is more thoughts on graphics, anything like that. Edit does we don't even have like any kind of logo or anything, do we?
We might. One of the earliest things that we did was to have a contest and invite people to participate. And I think that there's certainly something on our Facebook page that is like a logo.
Yeah, I mean it's something to kind of uh, put our brand on it, something that makes us stand out. That I don't know if we're allowed to use this Trumbull seal or anything like that, or but if something the graphics, I mean, this is probably down the road. I mean, I just think overall, I think that whatever we agree upon the scale down and we start to use it, I think you and I may go down to the town hall to understand how that works. And then it probably starts to evolve in a way where the structure will start setting itself of what works and what doesn't over time. I don't see this something that this is short term. So this is would probably be ongoing. So that's the only reason why I mentioned graphics on the back end, and I'd be look for. I mean, I would be willing to look into that if we don't have if we want to do something like that to add on to it.
From my perspective, I think we ought to figure out the substance of the survey, and then we can talk with people in the administration about methods of distribution and formatting and graphics and things. I don't mean to dismiss those things, but I think that those come second in the order in which we're trying to proceed. Joanne, you have a
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm allowed to respond, but I actually had a suggestion. Would that be okay to do? Or
Jim isn't here to tell me otherwise, so by all means.
it's just an observation, and from my point of view, that picking or specifically mentioning the police department sounds like you're kind of indicating there might be a problem in that department more than in others. So you might want to rephrase it to say, list other departments, or like the education department, or that comes to my mind right away, or say it less department specific. Maybe ask if there's a department in the town that you feel is what better or worse in dealing with in terms of diversity.
Didn't notice the mention of any department, so thank you for calling that to our attention. David, anything?
Joanne, can you just clarify? I know you don't have it in front of you, but where
Yeah.
were you?
It was somewhere near the bottom. There was a question about the police department.
Let me just share my screen again. It's about policies, not, and maybe it went quickly, but this is just general community policies.
No, it wasn't there.
Not there.
It specifically highlighted the police department.
Charlie, you want to just do a search for the word police?
Mm-hmm.
I missed it, so.
Yeah, I don't. That's I'm like, I don't think that's it. It's police is not pulling up anything.
Or unless I misread policy.
But that's why I'm wondering if you misread policies.
That's in the realm of possibility. But is there something below this, community practices?
Just the suggestions for improvement.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
Well,
remember.
Okay,
remember
that might
seeing-
have been it. I'm sorry.
Okay, we went through it kind of quickly.
Before you stop sharing your screen, sorry, Jonathan, you
Oh.
asked if I had any,
Sorry.
sorry about that. I just
I
wonder.
did, but you weren't fast enough.
Exactly. Sorry about that. I just wonder if since you've already got folks' attention, if you're sending us to them, and maybe this falls under suggestions for improvement, but I'm just like, anything else you'd like the committee to know? Just gives someone an opportunity to kind of rethink and write whatever kind of comes to mind, just so it's not so, the whole thing is not so prescriptive, maybe. Like an open essay question at the end, if someone feels the need or desire.
That's a good idea. That's a good idea.
I did see
So-
that in one of the links that was provided as an option.
So my reaction to this was consistent with the comment that David made earlier, and maybe a little bit inconsistent with the comment he's made now. I think that there's too much here. Rick has acknowledged that. I'm not yet sure what to cut or simplify, but I think we need to reduce it. And I'm strongly in favor of taking as many of those open-ended questions as possible and reframing them in a way that asks people to say either on a scale from 1 to 5, or to choose among infrequently, frequently, sometimes, or poorly, acceptably, well. I don't mean to figure out what each range should be, and they may vary, but I would very much like to structure it that way for at least two important reasons. One, I think we will have much better success if people are given choices to choose from, as opposed to asking them to fill in words that will grow very tiresome very fast, and also not be so easy to do on a small device. And the other is, when we seek to analyze the results, if people are choosing from the equivalent of A, B, C, and D every time, and not from some infinite array of possibilities, then we will be much better able to create, whether it's bar graphs, pie charts, or other kinds of analytical conclusions that would be almost impossible if we frame it in an open-ended. I think that the number of open-ended questions that we should have should be very few. Could be 1, could be 2, could be 3 at the end.
So I would propose then that perhaps Rick and I work to take the sort of general ideas and prompts that are here and make it look more like what we would intend to send to folks with the scale questions, the multiple choice questions, whatever. And that then might help us get more clear on what we can cut or where we think things might be duplicative to simplify
Yeah,
a little bit.
I mean, this right now is sort of like, everything in the kitchen sink. Wanted to see if there's anybody that wanted to weigh in on, okay, certain things here are crucial. Please make sure you don't cut X, Y, and Z. Any feedback in terms of like, okay, here's stuff that I really think, doesn't need to be on the first pass. So if you guys want to take a little bit of time to do a little bit of, you know, sort of keep cut, more type of pass at it, that'd be fine. If not, I'd be happy to take the next pass. Shala, obviously, love your help, and see if we can, knock it down to something that is close to what we could actually then, do a final polishing up of and be ready to go. So this wasn't intended to be like, okay, here it is. This is literally, okay, this is all the input we've got in one place. What do you want to do with this? Is there anything anybody finds superfluous or, really good and it's got to stay? Whatever feedback you guys can provide on this. But if there isn't any in the next week or so, I'll just take a crack at bringing it down to a manageable format.
I thought it was very thoughtful and very comprehensive. It's just that my two comments go, one to the design a little bit, and I understand you weren't designing it yet.
Right.
And the other is to the practical reality that for a survey like this, we need to, in my view, we need to be mindful that a little bit less is more, because we'll get more responses if we ask people to do less.
Mhm.
And so, Rick, I'm happy to do it either way. If you want to circulate what you've got and invite people to say yay and nay, that's fine. If you want to take a crack at narrowing it down and circulate that, that's fine too. I do think you provided lots of food for thought, but the next exercise is to take from what you've got and focus it.
Mm-hmm. That's fine.
Does anybody have a preference as to whether Rick and Shala work on it and then circulate it, or circulate it before they work on it? I mean, we can do it either way.
I personally think it could be helpful if we take what's here and get it into a space where it's more like what people would receive, because that will hopefully help people be able to see sort of what would be able to be answered more quickly, because it's a checkbox versus a scale versus and then how many open responses we have. I don't know. Maybe people would have ideas for like what to cut if it went around for a look as is. But for me, it seems like I think a lot of the feedback was these are all open-ended questions. And yes, because this was just like the brain dump of what we would want to include in the sections that we would have. And so it seems to me like it might be more helpful if we take what's here and put it into more of the shape that folks might receive, to then be able to have folks give feedback on what to keep, what to cut. But I'm happy to do it whichever way.
So, understanding that means that Rick and Shala are keeping the pen and keeping the burden. If that's okay with them,
That's fine.
Rodney or David, does either of you have a different view?
No,
Well, yeah, they can continue that. That's why I was saying that you and I could, in the meanwhile, while they're doing that, we could go find out how the distribution process works, find out about the graphics or how that would look. And do we, as a committee, do we have a timeline when we want to release this? When would we like to do that? Is this just open-ended till we get there, or are we going to say May 1st, or what do you think?
we had previously agreed, I thought, that we weren't in a rush and that there was something to be said for waiting a little while.
Okay.
And I don't think it makes sense to go to the administration and talk with them in the abstract about how to circulate a survey they haven't seen. I think that we will have a much more constructive dialogue about that when they know what it is we're talking about.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any further comment on this?
I would just add that depending on how it's distributed, we may want to try to get this done before the summer, just so it doesn't linger into, holidays and things of that sort.
Mhm.
Let's allow Rick and Shala to work on it and come back to us for our meeting in April and see where we're at.
Great.
That sounds good.
Okay, thank you both. Next up is Trumbull Times update. Last month, I told you I was going to take that off our agenda as a regular agenda item, and we would hope that the Trumbull Times would cover us from time to time. And I left it on for this month because lo and behold, they covered us. So you may have seen that Shanice Brown interviewed both Shala and, darn it, my mother's going to be very unhappy, me, and uh, published an article that I thought was helpful, but happy to have any conversation around that and whether people reacted to that in any way or had any feedback.
I didn't see it. Is there a link that's provided so I can read it?
Likewise.
Yeah, it was in the Trumbull Times, the Connecticut Insider, the New Haven Register, at least. We can.
I did reach out to her, but she didn't respond back so I could get it. So I'll just have to research it and see if I can find it. I didn't get a chance to read it.
I believe I have the link for it. I can email it to the group after the meeting.
Great.
That'd be great.
All right. Unless there's any other comment, I'll move on. Okay. Next up on the agenda, just very briefly, is the Asian and Pacific American Heritage Month event in May. I took on my plate last month to reach out and failed to do it, so it's back on my plate for this month to try to make sure that in a couple of months we actually have a display. I apologize, but we know what we're doing, and I just need to get it done. Next up is the Sustainable Fairfields Equity Committee reached out to us before our last meeting, and we agreed that I would reach back out to them and let them know of our interest and see if I could set up a meeting. I did do that, again, not as quickly as I might have, but long enough ago that I would have thought we would have had a reply by now, and we have not. At least I have not. Did anybody hear from them? Okay.
I haven't reached out, but I wouldn't mind trying to.
Hopefully we'll hear from them. I think that completes our old business. Under new business, I didn't list any agenda items, but I did want to provide a forum for Rodney to take just a minute if he's willing to share with us a little bit about his attendance at the recent townwide event.
Yeah, I definitely was taken back in terms of how it went a little bit. I enjoyed myself. I wanted to go because I wanted to get out of my comfort zone a little bit and get into the circle of town leadership. And it was really nice. It was 2 hours, and I was taken back that I was the only Black person in the room. I think I was probably about 75 people or 85 to guess. And that's just from what I saw, but that wasn't an issue though. No one made me feel uncomfortable or did anything insulting. It just was I was just taken back a little bit that with my event, with the event that I did in Trumbull community, and I'm hearing over time and over that Trumbull is a diverse town, but the leaders and the people who make the decisions about town, it is far from diverse. So when we hear issues about this teacher, for example, there's no people, it's probably not a lot of people in the room that are people of color that can probably say, okay, these are the proper procedures, things that we can do, or make pivotal decisions that is important, that keep things in mind that might affect people of color or welcome or things like that. So, but overall, I mean, I sat with Chief Lombardo and his team. I talked to Vicky for a while. I'd looked for Rena. She couldn't make it. But it was one of those events where I felt like I needed to know somebody to introduce me to people. It was definitely a bit isolating because I just don't know anybody. I'm still kind of fairly new here. But I attend. I want to continue to go to events like that because you have to build relationships. And I did talk to Dr. Sung for about 10 minutes. Nothing about anything what we do, but just to get basically a background of get to know someone and learn their background. The read of the room that I got was people just kind of wanted to take, a breath, a minute, just to relax and enjoy the hard work that they've done, or we've all have done and contributed. And that's what we did. Broke some bread, had some great meal, some drinks, and it was a good time. However, it's just one of those things where we do need improvement of people of color to represent department heads and town leadership, and we are far from it.
Thank you, Rodney. Can you just, I'm sorry, I don't know what the event was called, or can you just
It was a
share
commissions
what that
dinner.
was?
The commissions dinner. I think it was the commissions dinner that we all got invitations to.
Yeah. I have personally not been able to attend that in any of the recent years that I've been invited. First, there was COVID, then I had COVID, then I had business trips, including this time. Has anybody else attended one of these? I know, Bill, I know you were there the other night. I don't know if you want to share your experience, but Joanne, you were there. Um,
I didn't attend this past one, but I've been to a few.
okay. Thank you, Rodney, for sharing. Unless is there any other
You're welcome.
new business to come before us tonight? Okay, then I will call for a motion.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you. All right, all in favor? That one usually carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.